Trevor Story is at risk of being one of the worst Red Sox signings in history. More on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed for free. And we really are talking free here. Does not cost anything to check out the show, so might as well start or end your day the right way with Locked On Red Sox, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Red Sox, where we are coming off of another Red Sox win on Monday. I know it's only spring training, but we take what we can get. Any victory is a victory in my eyes, especially seeing as we don't know how many the Red Sox are going to win in the regular season. They did beat the Phillies 7-6 on Monday. I'm going to be diving a little bit more into some solid performances in that game a little bit later on the show. But first, a man that there definitely is some cause for concern about. The Red Sox signed him as a free agent a couple off seasons ago, and then he spent almost all of last year on the injured list. He was able to come back and play for the last couple months of the season, but he certainly did struggle offensively, and that's Trevor Story. We've seen him play great defense for Boston since he's come back from the IL, and in 2024, that's definitely a strength of his that he'll be able to bring to the table, is being able to provide some solid defense for a Red Sox team that really needs it because their infield defense was very weak last year. So in order for him to be more productive and be looked at as a player that the Red Sox see as valuable, he needs to get better at the plate. It definitely feels like the infield as a whole is more seamless defensively with him, but he hit just 203 last year with 3 home runs, 32 hits, and 14 RBIs. He also scored 12 runs and stole 10 bases, so he will give you some speed, which is always a good thing. He had an on-base percentage of .250 and a slugging percentage of .316 with an OPS of .566. And in case you're unfamiliar with that, OPS basically means on-base percentage plus slugging. So how many times are you able to get on base, but how many bases are you getting to go with those hits? So it's basically combining how many bases you're able to get at a given time. So that was relatively high, could be higher for sure though. What helped him, I think, a lot was his ability to steal bases and find ways to turn singles into doubles when he was getting a hit. So that's something that surely benefited him in 2023. But one thing that's a huge cause for concern with Story is that he only played in 43 games last year, and in those 43 games he struck out 55 times. That's pretty brutal, absolutely not ideal. He surely needs to step up in that category. We saw a lot of whiffs, lots of swings and misses. It was almost like he had no control over where the ball was going or had no sense of what pitches he should be swinging at or not. And unfortunately, that's more of a rookie move. Once you start to develop, you're able to hone in on more of that pitch selection that the pitchers are using, and you're able to sit there and identify, hey, this pitch is likely going to be a fastball down the middle. This pitcher wants to challenge me right now, and you can be prepared for that. Or he's probably going to throw a changeup here. And that's what makes the professional baseball players professional. They know how to identify those types of things. They know how to try to prepare themselves for what's coming. And what makes a pitcher as strong as they are at the professional level is they can continue to fool hitters no matter what and change up what the hitter thinks they're going to throw. So they're able to keep hitters on their feet and wondering what's going to come. But Story was not good with selecting and recognizing that during the 2023 season. And it has correlated, unfortunately, to his performance in spring training. In Monday's game against the Phillies, he went 0 for 2 with a walk and 2 strikeouts. So the fact that you struck out pretty much every time you were up at the plate is concerning. He did take 1 walk. So what this shows me is that he's not being aggressive at the plate. He's not having as much of an ability to recognize, okay, what should I be swinging at next? And then he's either drawing it out and taking a walk because the pitcher didn't have the control, or he's whiffing. And that's something that the Red Sox need to get to the bottom of. In Sunday's game versus the Twins, when the Red Sox won 8-6, he went 1 for 3 in that game with a strikeout then as well. So he's kind of showing a little bit of his form from last year. And obviously there's time for him to figure it out. It's only spring training. It's hard to know for sure how a player is going to turn out. But if he continues on this trajectory and continues to not be able to produce at the plate, it's going to look like a really bad signing for Boston. I mean, I would be less concerned if all of his outs weren't strikeouts, because he's not really doing much at all other than striking out. I'd almost prefer if he's still recording it out, but it's even a ground ball or a deep fly ball, or he's making some sort of contact to show that he's not completely lost at the plate. Because last year he did look lost, looked like he had no idea what was coming, no idea what to swing at, and he almost looked out of sorts. And I did worry about this originally when the Red Sox signed him, because he came from Colorado, and that's a very hitter-friendly ballpark. And he wasn't as tested being on a field that isn't as friendly towards hitters. And Trevor Story is a player who has a history of success. Obviously, you know, we know that he definitely has a track record as a 2-time All-Star and 2-time Silver Slugger. But none of that matters if he can't produce now when the Red Sox need him to. And again, I'm not saying he can't figure it out, but 3 strikeouts over the course of a 2-day stretch is certainly not a promising sign at all, especially when you're not taking that many at-bats. I mean, you can't take 3 at-bats, 2 of them being strikeouts and 1 not technically counting as an at-bat because it was a walk. So really you just had 2 at-bats and both were strikeouts. That absolutely is unacceptable. And the thing with Story is he can get those numbers down. I mean, he struck out about 32% of the time during the 2023 season. He will have those swing and misses, and we've seen this happen with Giancarlo Stanton on the Yankees too. He is a home run hitter. He hits for power, but he also strikes out a lot because he fails to make contact. And Trevor Story is a similar type of hitter. You have to go in knowing he's going to get the strikeouts, but the problem is that it happens way too frequently, and he hasn't been able to do a whole lot of value during his time in Boston so far. He only hit 3 home runs last year. Again, granted, he only played in that 43 games, but still, they signed him, and part of that was because of his power and his ability to hit a lot of home runs. Where is that power? Was it because of his injury and that has impacted his ability to hit the ball deep? I certainly hope not. His arm has come out strong after the surgery. He definitely gives the Red Sox the defense that they need, but my concern that I'm focusing on is he needs to diversify himself significantly at the plate if he wants to be successful. And I really hope he can figure out how to do that in these coming months, especially over the next 5 weeks or so before we truly get into opening day in the season, because if he continues to go about this the way that he is and he's not finding success, those offensive numbers are going to be tough to look at. So again, I don't like to read too much into spring training, but it's just not a good start for him at all, and hopefully he can use the rest of this spring to get back on track. Coming up, I'm going to be talking about some positive things to come out of the Red Sox 7-6 victory over Philly. So that's coming up next. Are you ever lost and needing car parts? I know I am. I really don't know much about it at all, but eBay Motors has been an absolute lifesaver for me. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I love eBay Motors because it really gives me a sense of feeling like I have help and resources when it comes to my car. I mean, I'm no expert. That's why I'm not a mechanic, and I work in sports podcasting. So eBay Motors absolutely will have you covered too. The other thing that will have you covered is Locked On Sports Today, as we as a network have launched the first ever national sports streaming channel on YouTube. And it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I tell you, this is great. So you don't have to scroll through Twitter and constantly be looking at that to find your sports information. Locked On Sports Today will keep you updated and in the know 24/7. The Boston Red Sox have had a few spring training games already, and so far they did lose a game to the Baltimore Orioles in walk-off fashion on Saturday, but they did play a split squad game on a Sunday. Basically, a lot of the A-list guys on the team played in one game against the Twins, and then a lot of the more backup lower end types of guys in the system played another game against the Braves. The Red Sox took home wins in both, which was a great sign, although they did blow a 6-0 lead against the Twins, which is a concern and something we saw a lot of last year, but they pulled it out by winning 8-6, which was awesome. And then on Monday, they played the Phillies and won 7-6. They actually won that game on a walk-off. Essentially, it was a walk-off wild pitch, and Nick York scored on that wild pitch. But hey, I mean, that's baseball. You take what you can get, and a win is a win, even though it doesn't count for the Red Sox record. One thing that is really worthy of noting from that game is Tanner Houck's outing. He pitched 2 innings, giving up 0 runs, didn't give up any walks either. And that's great for him because Houck is somebody that we really need to be able to step up into a big role in 2024. I think the Red Sox organization trusts him a lot to be a guy that they could rely on, whether that's out of the bullpen or as a starting pitcher. And it's a similar situation with Garrett Whitlock, who I talked about on the show yesterday. There's still a question that remains of whether Houck should be a starter or a reliever. And I've always been in the camp for him as well that he is better off out of the bullpen. I think he brings his best stuff there, but the Red Sox seem pretty adamant on trying to make him a starter. In which case, though, he needs to be able to pitch deeper into games. His numbers are historically bad when he sees a lineup the third time as compared to the first 2 times when he excels. So again, this was a short stint that he pitched. Only pitching 2 innings, you really can't gauge whether that means he's going to be better off as a starter or as a reliever during the season. But it's a similar tactic to Whitlock. If you want to stretch him out to make him a starter, then have him start to increase his number of innings that he's pitching during the rest of the spring. Since he pitched 2 innings last time, maybe he pitches 3 innings the next time he pitches, and so on. You continue to add an inning, add a 4th inning the next time after that. So they can make that work. They just need to put the work and the pressure on him, and now is the time to do it when it's spring training and these games don't count for your regular season record, because if they're starting to pile on more of a workload to him and he struggles, then it's a learning curve and an experience that he can take and improve on. And now is the time to figure that out and hone in on those strengths and weaknesses and get yourself ready for the season. He gave up no hits in the outing either. He threw 21 pitches total, 15 of them for strikes. So his command was definitely on, which is a super promising sign. That's one thing I will say about Tanner Houck is his command is usually pretty consistent in those first couple innings that he pitches. So that seems like a typical Tanner Houck 2-inning outing. And one thing Alex Cora said over the weekend that was notable about Tanner Houck was that his velocity is up the most of anyone on the team. That wasn't immediately evident in his outing on Monday. His fastball averaged 94 to 95 miles per hour and his cutter 90 to 91 miles per hour, which were both in line with his season averages last year. But Cora was happy with what he saw, and Houck said he doesn't usually pay attention to his velocity this early in camp anyway. He said he tends to get in his head and thinks that he needs to try and throw harder, and then he starts overthrowing, and then all of his mechanics start to go out the window. So he tries to stay smooth and just do his thing and not worry about how fast the ball is actually going. So the fact that he had a good outing and Alex Cora is noticing some positive difference with him, that's fantastic, because again, the Red Sox seem to see him as a valuable arm on this team and somebody who can contribute a lot going into the 2024 season. And I have a feeling they're going to put him in the rotation. It seems like that's what they've been doing a lot with him. They seem to treat him as more of a starter. And with any pitcher in spring training, they're not going to pitch a lot of innings at first because they don't want to risk injuries or pitchers' arms being overworked and not being in the best shape possible for when the season does start. So it's not likely that we're going to see him immediately increase the workload, but there is another month or so of spring training to give him the opportunity to continue to throw when he's not pitching in a live game and work out those mechanics and build up that stamina, because he did not have a lot of that stamina and capability before to get through those longer stints and longer outings. How does he get out of jams when he has runners on base and it's the middle of the 4th inning and Alex Cora really wants him to finish the inning? How does he adjust mid-game if he seems to be starting to struggle so that he can continue to have a good outing and have a quality start? Because at the end of the day, you want the pitchers to have quality starts consistently. Tanner Houck is a special pitcher. I mean, that slider is deadly. And the fact that Alex Cora noticed it is key. I mean, saying his velocity went up the most out of anybody on the staff is certainly a promising sign for what he can bring to the table. Again, it's hard to really know for sure what goes on behind the scenes because we don't see all of that, but he did look very good. He looked confident. He looked ready for the season to start, and that's definitely something that I'm happy about, because sometimes pitchers will go into camp and look a little bit rusty, and you don't really know how that's going to translate to their performance during the season. So if he can continue to consistently pitch well, then they can add more to his workload. And does Houck have the potential to be a starter? Absolutely. I'm not saying he doesn't. I just think right now he's better out of the bullpen unless they start to put him in more situations where he is forced to be able to succeed out of the rotation. And then we can talk and have this conversation again about him maybe potentially being a full-time starter more often. And yes, he's had some good outings as a starter. It's not like he never has, but the bad outings overpower the good ones in terms of him losing that control and starting to kind of lose a lot of his mechanics later on in those starts. So maybe that's a mental thing too. Who knows? But hopefully Andrew Bailey can hone in on that stuff and work with him and say, okay, what can we do to put you in the best position possible to be a key and consistent starter for this team? I trust Bailey to help figure that out, but props to Tanner Houck for having a solid outing in his Grapefruit League debut this season. Coming up, another guy's been on fire the last couple days for the Red Sox in spring training. Could that be a key secret weapon for Boston in 2024? You're about to find out. If you love sports betting or you've gotten super frustrated because you don't feel like you're winning any money, FanDuel can fix that problem for you. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. FanDuel's great for multiple reasons. It gives you so many opportunities to win, and you feel like you can do a lot of different sports and get yourself involved in betting on different things. And it kind of forces you to follow other sports that you might not normally follow otherwise. So if you're looking to diversify the sports you follow or your skill sets in sports betting, FanDuel is a great place for you to start. Another great place for you to check out is Locked On Sports Today. What that is a 24/7 sports streaming channel that's constantly updating you on everything going on in sports with the local experts here at Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So you can find Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Basically, it'll give you a solid rundown at whatever time of day you're looking for it of anything going on in sports, just a constant flowing stream. So head to that today as well because it'll keep you in the loop and you'll feel so good about it. One position in baseball that's very important for a team to have is a utility player, a guy who can really do it all, can go around and play in the infield, play in the outfield, make himself available to pretty much jump in and do whatever the team needs him to do. And Rob Refsnyder is exactly that type of player. He does spend a ton of more time in the outfield than he does in the infield. It's pretty rare that he does play in the infield, and a lot of times when he does, it's due to the fact that there's somebody injured on the team and they really don't have a choice, so they put him there. But he definitely, you can tell, prefers to be in the outfield. That's where he's more comfortable, and that's where he feels like his home is at Fenway Park. But the other thing too is at the plate, he's been an asset for Boston. I mean, he absolutely dominated against left-handed pitching last year. It was to the point where they would sit Jarren Duran every time the Red Sox were facing a lefty, and they'd put Refsnyder in the lineup in his place instead because his numbers against lefties are deadly. It's a great weapon for the Red Sox to have in 2024 as somebody who you know can consistently hit well against left-handed pitching. And he's been playing well in his first couple games of spring training. He's been an absolute run-producing machine. He knocked in 2 RBIs in Sunday's win over the Twins, and then he followed things up on Monday with another 2 RBI effort, going 1 for 2 with an RBI single and a run-scoring ground out. So he's producing, he's making noise, and it was definitely refreshing for Boston, given that Trevor Story went 0 for 2 with a walk, and the other players that went 0 for 2 with a walk included Rafael Devers and Masataka Yoshida. So there wasn't a lot of contribution from the stronger players in the lineup, the guys who you expect to produce. So Refsnyder jumped in and was able to produce from that standpoint. Catcher Tyler Heineman also went 2 for 2 with a run, and second baseman Nick York went 1 for 2 with a walk and 2 runs scored, including that game-winning run on the wild pitch that gave the Red Sox the walk-off win in the bottom of the ninth. I'm very excited for Nick York, by the way. He's a very strong second base prospect. Now that the Red Sox have Vaughn Grissom, who knows what their infield situation in the future is going to look like. Nick York is certainly a talented player who I definitely would hang on to for now, because Grissom might not pan out, or they might end up needing both. Maybe they try to move Trevor Story, although that would be hard to do if he can't get his offensive numbers up. But maybe you keep both, and then maybe down the road you realize you don't really need York anymore because there isn't a place for him on the major league roster. So then you eventually decide to trade him. But none of that needs to be made now in terms of a decision. He's absolutely killing it so far in spring training, definitely making the most of his at-bats and making an impact. But you want to have guys like that who are going to step up when your main guys are not present and not able to perform. And Devers is going to have a great season in 2024. I'm pretty confident in that. But that doesn't mean he's going to have a good game every game. He's going to have days where he struggles. He's going to have days where he's not able to produce at the level he wants to produce at. And if he has some protection in the lineup and guys who are able to step in those situations, that's key. And Refsnyder last season was a guy who came in clutch in a lot of different types of situations when there were runners on base and the Red Sox needed somebody to come in big and get a hit to drive in a run. He did that the majority of the time. And that's why he was so reliable last year. And I'm hoping that translates into his 2024 season. And even that mentality that he had on Monday of going in there and getting things done and finding ways to put more runs across the board for the Red Sox is a great asset to bring it to any Major League Baseball team. So he's definitely having a strong opening to spring training, and this means that things could get interesting. The Red Sox have never really seen Refsnyder as an everyday role player, more a guy who is kind of secondary, can come in and play in the outfield when a guy has a rest day or when a guy is injured, but he's never really been thought of as a starting outfielder in Boston. But what happens if he continues this offensive pace that he's been playing at the last couple days? Now, again, it's only spring training. Hard to know for sure what's going to continue and what's going to not. Is he going to be able to produce at that level moving forward? So many question marks still with that. But if he does, that could spice things up a little bit for the outfield, because you have Yoshida, who can't really play defense that well, is trying to find his swing again after last year. We're wondering if he's going to be able to bounce back this year after the second half he had last year. Then you have Tyler O'Neill, who definitely defensively has made an impact in his first couple outings in spring training. And then you have Wilyer Abreu, who really performed well last year when he was called up, but it was a small sample size, so too soon still to know if he's going to be a consistent asset for Boston. Then you have Jarren Duran, who had a phenomenal season in 2023, brought a lot of spark and energy to the Red Sox lineup that they needed. So that's a key piece of this team too. But the question becomes, what if Refsnyder continues to hit at the level he's hitting at and he's outplaying somebody like Masataka Yoshida? Because Tyler O'Neill is showing off defensively so far why the Red Sox traded for him. They are going to get good defensive productivity from him, and hopefully his offense starts to get there too. So that is something to think about, because on the flip side, Masataka Yoshida hasn't been hitting well so far yet in spring training. Again, it's early, still probably working to get back into the groove of things after the offseason. But he also defensively made a ton of errors in the outfield last year, and it's hard to feel confident that that'll change, because Fenway's a tough place defensively to play. And with so many of his scouting reports before signing with the Red Sox, a lot of that was saying that his defense is tough to watch. So the question becomes, does Refsnyder take his place as an everyday outfielder, and then they kind of work Yoshida into being more of an everyday DH? It'd be interesting to see how that happens, because if Refsnyder continues to produce, you're going to want him out there. regardless of the fact that they haven't seen him as a starting outfielder yet during his time in Boston, they'll want him out there if he's the one being productive. So I'm interested in seeing that storyline the rest of the spring. Does Refsnyder continue to produce? Do the Red Sox consider moving him into a more of an everyday outfielder and switching Yoshida into DH? Only time will tell. Would be interesting if they do that, though, right? Gotta wonder. As always, though, keep the faith. Go Red Sox. Enjoy watching more spring training games, and I will catch you on the flip side.